All right? If you were on this team, you selected one, you click next. What is the answer that I give you? Same colors in each part. It was a predefined answer for you guys. If I go back, I select two. Different colors in each part. Nobody thought about that. Nobody even saw it. So I tricked you. I gave one answer to these guys, I gave a different answer to these guys. And even though some people got the right answer, some people got the different answer, the predominant answer on this group was what I wanted you to say. The predominant answer on this group was what I wanted you to say. So I created the environment. I created the context for you to give me the answers I was looking for. How many of you have thought about those things for the projects you're doing? All right. What time is it? 3:30. I'm sorry, Professor. I'm going more than 2 hours. Let's have a quick break, 5 minutes, and we'll come back.
Exatamente. Sem pessoas. Só se tem uma foto
Maybe we could today you want tomorrow? They are not available for this group. Like in your group. They just want to know what is the number. They just want to know what number. Yeah, that's it. And I don't think that this would be useful. Because, as I said, they will move the phone from one to the one. Yeah, definitely. We could discuss, but do you think that the problem is variation? Maybe that could be. For me, I think that I have some ideas. Okay, but I need to.
Já?
Só mudar.
You have only 5 people.
Okay, guys, ready? All right. So, what, after saying all this, what culture that we need to consider? The next question is, how do you design a culturally adaptive system? So I told you, you need to be aware of this, and you need to create an environment to make the culture possible. But how do you understand that culture? What do you need to do to understand the culture? So I've asked you, you need to understand it, but the question is how? Anybody? Observing? Live? Searching? But one thing that Dr. Sonny has been telling you is that you can't improve what you cannot measure. How do you measure this? So, well, this is just to give you the context. Bless you. This is the plant I was telling you about. This is Numi. So that's in Fremont, California. Okay? So this is a very historical plant because it's basically where the story of lean as itself started in practice here in the Western world, if we call it like that, or at least in the United States. So what do you think is there now? What is the future of automotive? Anybody knows? Huh? Electric cars. So the same facility is now this. Why do you think they picked this one? What happened? What happened with Numi?
The environment changed, so
The environment changed. Well, truth be told that lean is not foolproof. It's not failure-proof. Right? So Numi became, they were not making money anymore. So they had to sell the plant. Not that Toyota is not making money, it's a business decision. And they sold it to them, and they are very profitable now. Why? Because they're changing technologies. They used a facility that was historical, because this guy, anybody knows who's behind this? Elon Musk. So this guy is kind of eccentric, and he likes to do these things, so he bought this plant. So how do we measure these things? That was just to get you back into attention. Would you work in an environment like that? No? Guys that are working at Denso, have you been to the offices?
Yes.
How do they look like? Are Aren't they like that? Probably not that crowded, but they don't have walls. But how is people used to work here in the United States? See, this is, if you take every desk here, how many desks you have per space and how many people inside a space? People work here like that, right? How many people is in each space? So some of you are working with layout design, some of you are working with inventory, some of you are working with the people, so. Huh?
It's from the office.
From the office.
Yep. So what is the difference? Do we mean that reducing waste means put more people in each room? Maybe yes, maybe not. That's the question. Does that mean that reduction of inventory means always try to put zero inventories? Again, it has to deal with the context, right? So waste, the 7 wastes are bad, but sometimes you need to understand the bigger picture to know what is a priority. So we go back to this. How do we understand these things? You've seen this picture many times, I hope, already, right? So we need to understand the values that characterize a culture, that define the principles, and then Professor Guilherme is going to talk to you about leadership in order to create change, right? So that's the cycle that we need to understand. But yet again, I have a question for you. How do we measure this? How do we understand this? So we have to consider many things behind implementations. Yet there's some initiatives, some people that have studied these in order to try to explain a little bit better the concept of culture. So John Shook, the same person, the first American to work for Toyota, he had a paper explaining about his learning in NUMMI, and he says that according to Dr. Shine, the version of culture is that we need to understand basic assumptions in order to understand values and attitudes, and then those reflect the artifacts of our behavior. What is an artifact of behavior? You have described it in the way you perceive other people. An artifact of behavior that describes Mexican culture is party, okay? That's actually researched. Mexicans, we like to party a lot, probably more than any other culture. And things that for us are not party, for other cultures are party, right? I remember I had this friend from China where we had a party, a very, very, very awesome party. Wild party. So everybody was drinking but me, okay? Yeah, I was taking care of everybody. Yeah. So that party was, I don't know, call it any given Friday. So 2 weeks later, he would live near where I lived. We told him his roommate was another person from Brazil, and he said, "Yeah, let's just come and let's just talk. Let's just have a beer and talk." So we told, "Yeah, that's fine." And then he had another friend from Brazil who used to go like every Friday just to watch movies while they were having a beer. So after a month, my Chinese friend comes back and says, "How much do you guys do like to party?" I said, "Well, yeah, we do like parties, but we haven't had one since that party you had." He said, "No, I mean, you guys being here after 2 weeks, and then this other guy comes every week and they party like every weekend." And I I didn't understand, so I went and asked my Brazilian friend, and I asked him, "Are you having parties every weekend?" He said, "No." "Then what are you doing?" "This other guy just comes, we get a six-pack, and we watch a movie." So for this guy, my Chinese friend, that was a party. So you see the context. So all the artifacts, according to Dr. Shine, explain our culture. John Shook said otherwise. He said, in order to create change in an organization, we need to change what we do so that then we shift our values and attitudes that will define our culture. So he started backwards. We need to change our behavior by what we do. If we want to be conscious about punctuality, we have to be on time first. And then we can define punctuality as part of our values. If I'm not on time, I cannot say that that's a value for me. I assume most of you agree that punctuality is a value. But yet, we are not punctual. So how can I say it is a value if I am not? We have hierarchies of values. There are other things that are more important. So that goes back to our principles. What should we consider every single time we're doing lean? The flow, reduce variation and disruptions, eliminate disruptions as much as possible, and think in the quality of life of people. That's from the perspective of lean. As simple as that. How do we do that? We can measure flow based on all that you learned? Yes? Can we measure variation and disruptions? Yes. Can we have a system that tells us the reliability of the combination of all these things? That's what you learned this morning. How do we improve the quality of life of people? So the Toyota production system, it says, if we focus on these three things and we combine them, inherently we are working on the artifacts that will change the behavior, right? And if we are able to standardize and implement discipline following this, we will be able to drive a different behavior. Yet, that was not enough for us. So how do we understand what cultures really mean behind this? We know at some point everybody's going to get there. Where do we start? Remember that chart, the S-curve shape? What do we need to understand that makes different a person from Mexico than a person from China, than a person from the United States, or a person from Brazil? So we went ahead and saw how many people have started studying culture. And I'm going to show you just one. So these are 4 of the most popular research instruments of people trying to measure culture and trying to measure how cultures are different around the world. So that's the measurement part. And they define different attributes. So you see the first one, Shores Valley Survey. They have 56 questions, and they define culture by 10 individual variables, 7 at the country level, and 4 comparisons. If you see this one, Globe, which is one very popular, they have defined 9 different dimensions to determine how cultures are different. If you see this one, Valley Survey Module, this is probably the most popular of all of them. You see the sample size, 116,000 people interviewed. And they define 5 dimensions, 6. It has evolved eventually, but 5 are consistently there based on 30 questions, all right? So I'm going to show you that one. The person there, I don't know if you heard about him before, his name is Gerd Hofstede. Has anybody heard about him before? He's a Dutch professor. So Hofstede said culture can be measured, I'm going to show you 6 variables here, from these 6 concepts. So in order to determine how cultures are different, they have to be substantially different in a combination of these 6 things. He says if they're different in the level of masculinity, femininity on the contrast, if they are different in the power distance, that means cultures that have a very big separation among the relationship of boss and subordinate, or countries that boss and subordinates are considered the same. Individualism, I skip. That is how countries consider the value more of the individual over the group. So the contrast of individualism is collectivism. We have uncertainty avoidance, how countries prefer to avoid the unknown versus doesn't matter what happens the next minute. Okay? Long-term orientation is somewhat similar, but it is different in the sense of planning. So long-term orientation means I plan my activities according to results over the long term versus immediate gratification. I do and live my life to get rewarded instantly. And I don't care about what happens in 1 year or 10 years. I just care about right now. And then monumentalism index, again, was defined as how people would put the perception of idols. In other words, how people would perceive a figure like Neymar. Is he a hero or is he a normal person? So cultures are defined in these dimensions. All right? So let me quickly do an exercise so you can see this. And you are not able to see. So Gerhofstadt said we can see how the countries are different. So I'm going to select the countries right here. This is his website. So let's see. All of you agree that we need to see United States, right? Because you're working, your projects in the United States. So the monumentalism evolving to this indulgence factor. So power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. So based on these 6 different factors, he says the United States looks like this. Does that tell you anything? Now, I can explain a little bit more so that it tells you something. Here, 0 means very little of that. Almost 100 means a lot of that. Okay? So what's the highest point here in the United States? So that explains that people in the United States are very individualistic. Okay? As a matter of fact, is the highest score in that dimension. I'm sorry.
What do you mean with long-term orientation?
Long-term orientation means planning for the future over several years. That what you do now is going to affect you in the next 30 years.
What I think is the basic orientation.
In this scale for United States, it's the lowest. All right? So, who else do you want to see?
Brazil.
Okay. Brazil is right there. Who else do you want to see? And I'm not sure if I can add one more. All right? So if we do this again,
Japan?
you're gonna leave United States out right now, but you're gonna see here. So it's Mexico, Brazil, and China. So you can see things, how they are similar or different regarding these scales, right? So what does it mean? Power distance, Mexico and China have a similar perception. Brazil closer. From the three, Brazil would be the most individualistic, but it's still within range, right? Masculinity, Mexico has the highest level of masculinity. Uncertainty avoidance. So Mexico and Brazil are very high versus China being slightly low. That probably would be the most substantial difference.
What is that?
How do you avoid people, situations that you don't know the outcome? Then long-term orientation.
So it's like same as Mexicans prefer like play it safe. Like Mexicans you prefer playing it safe.
Yes. Let's see the contrast here. From the three countries, China, extremely high in long-term orientation, planning for the future. And Mexico, instant gratification. If I don't get reward for what I'm doing right now, I'm not gonna do it. Okay? So, how's that useful for you guys? What if we need to look at implementation of machine layout? What if we need to look at what is the baseline of the Toyota production system? Isn't it teamwork? So how are we designing teamwork as an element necessary for Lean, where we're working in the country that has the least teamwork of all? What do you do? How do you approach it? Again, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying people don't work in teams here in the United States. All we're saying is that the research from here, based on those dimensions, tell you something. Might not be an absolute truth, but it gives you a hint. All right? So what should we pay attention to? We're doing Lean in the United States. What's the first thing I need to take care of?
Culture.
Of course, culture, but what is culture? Individualism. So the first question I need to ask myself, if I want to make Lean successful in the United States, I need to make sure that I teach my people how to work in teams. If I don't do that, my implementation is not going to succeed. Right? What would be the first thing that you would teach a Mexican? Probably plan ahead, but more than that, the results are not going to come instantly. Right? It's going to take time through discipline to see the results of the implementation. There's not going to be instant rewards. It's discipline and doing